In 2019, Ford broke the internet with the news that it was going to be halting production on the majority of its passenger cars in lieu of crossovers and SUVs. This came as a major shock to most of Ford's biggest fans, as Ford was known for having a really strong lineup, especially in the sedan and hatchbacks, in the Ford Fiesta and Ford Focus models. Of those, you also had the Ford Focus ST and the Ford Fiesta ST, which were highly revered as some of the most enjoyable and also economical front-wheel drive cars that you could buy. However, Ford did have a backup plan for how they were going to please these customers that were used to having the performance options of some of these smaller cars. And that brings us to where we are currently. Hello, my name is Brian Cooper, sales consultant over here at Ken Wilson Ford in Canton, North Carolina. Today it is my pleasure and opportunity to give you a walk around and tour and show you some of the features of the 2020 Ford Edge ST. And the Ford SUV and crossover lineup, the Edge has always served as the sporty or athletic one of the bunch. Here we actually have a lineup of the different models from the SE, the SEL, and the Titanium. While these are in their second generation, the 2019 and 2020 Ford Edge serves as a redesign from the previous front and rear fascia. While the Edge already has a sporty appearance, the Edge ST takes that to the next level with a much more aggressive design and performance characteristics. Here you can see it stands out from the rest of these with a completely different front end. You can see it's got a wider grille, both on the top and bottom, as well as the overall sporty appearance with the lower front bumper, as well as the painted side skirts and rear bumper. All Edges come with an EcoBoost engine, but the Edge ST takes things the next level. In the regular Edge, all of the SE, SEL, and Titanium models, they come with a 2-liter 4-cylinder turbo engine, which makes right around 250 horsepower and a little bit more than that in torque. With the Edge ST, however, we swap out that 4-cylinder for a 2.7-liter EcoBoost V6, which is a twin-turbo EcoBoost engine, making 335 horsepower and about 380 foot-pounds of torque. So as far as performance figures go, this car is absolutely no slouch. One of my favorite design elements of the rear end of this car is how they've basically built in the rear exhaust pipes into the bumper. Now, these chrome tips are not the actual exhaust tips themselves. As you can see, the exhaust is inside the bumper, but however, it is a nice design cue, and I'm sure if you wanted to, you could integrate that a little bit more, but honestly, I think it looks really good as it is. All of the Edges have LED headlights, LED tail lights, basically LED lighting all around, and you even have the option for having LED turn signals, so you pretty much have an extremely modern and sleek look at all 4 corners of lighting, to include the fog lamps up front. Again, here's kind of a comparison again of this front end when you put it right next to the base and mid-level models of the Edge. It is definitely a totally different look than the rest of these. To improve both performance and efficiency, Ford has integrated an active shutter system into the grille. It's actually a pretty neat design here. As we look in and behind the grille, we can see all these different plastic flaps right here that actually cover the radiator and AC condenser. The way those work is basically, depending on what's needed for higher speed or lower speed, those little plastic flaps can electronically open or close to allow more or less air. Obviously, when you're idling or at low speeds, you need as much air over the radiator as possible for better engine cooling. And that's really important here because the turbos on this car are actually water cooled, and that, that water, if you will, that coolant comes from the radiator. So that's extremely important when you're at low speeds, especially in traffic. But as you move on to higher speeds and you have enough air circulating underneath of the car and through everything there, the engine can better maintain its own temperature, so those flaps will close, which will allow the air to kind of force itself around the outside and top and bottom of the vehicle, which makes it a little bit more aerodynamic. and kind of provides a little bit less of a drag coefficient while you're, you know, at higher highway speeds. So it's a pretty neat design. Now, a lot of companies are starting to bring that design element in. Ford is by no means the first company to actually introduce that, but it's nice to see that kind of technology adopted by more manufacturers. As someone who is 6'3", something I take very seriously is actually how much space you have inside the cabin of any car or SUV. I have kind of a personal opinion that if there's any vehicle out there that has 4 doors, it should be able to easily accommodate at least 4 adults. And I mean, and a full adult could sit in the front seat with a front seat at a comfortable level, while another adult, specifically a taller one like myself, could sit in the back seat, and both could basically have an equal level of comfort. I think there is way too many times you'll have a 4-door car or a truck or even an SUV that has 4 doors, but just absolutely has no back seat space. And one thing I'm going to point out here next is just how much room you have in the back seat of the Ford Edge. Now, this goes for both the regular model Edges and of course the ST. All right, let's go ahead and hop in the back of this thing. We'll hop in the front next. So as we see here, we actually have the front seat adjusted all the way back. I normally would have it a little bit farther forward, but I figured we'd have it all the way back for the sake of this test. So let's go ahead and just hop in the back and kind of see how I fit. So coming in here, I actually fit pretty well, even with the seat all the way back. I can sit up, I can lean back a little bit. Now with the seat all the way back, I do have my knees touching the back, but it's actually not pushing into them. And again, even as somebody tall like me, I would never have the seat as far back as it is. But the point that I'm making here is I can actually fit back here really comfortably without any kind of issues like that. In fact, I actually think it's a really comfortable back seat. The leather here is extremely soft. It's kind of this mix match of leather and kind of like a cloth. I think it might be like an ActiveX seating material, which is Ford's premium cloth seating. It basically kind of is really tough and resistant to tears and stains and things like that. But one of my favorite features, at least with the ST and a lot of the, actually most of the titaniums, is the fact that back here we actually have a heated rear seat. You can see here, it's a little blurry, but you can see here we actually have heat controls for both the driver and passenger rear seat, and that's really cool. It's probably one of the first cars in a while that I've jumped in that actually has heated back seats without it being something like a, you know, Mercedes or something really high end, especially something, you know, up and beyond the, you know, $100,000 price range here. I really like how simple the design is. Like, it definitely has a sporty look to it, but I like that there is kind of this offset, you know, white stitching. I believe all of the leather options, or at least with this package, have the option to have opposite stitching from the color of the leather. I think that's something that just looks really good. Especially, I mean, a lot of back seats and door cards in the back seats get, you know, looked over and forgotten because they put so much effort on the front seats. You just kind of get like a plastic skin on the back. And back here in the Edge ST, we actually have really nice leather stitched door cards here. Just really high quality. You have literally the same build materials out back here as you do up in the front of the car. I think it's really nice. It's just kind of an attention to detail that you don't really get anywhere else. Now, something else I am a fan of, and this generally seems to be a Ford design cue, is the fact that when you shut the doors in any of their SUVs, you still actually have a little bit of a gap between you and the door. It's kind of nice. In a lot of sedans and small SUVs, as the door shuts, you kind of feel like you're getting, you know, entrapped in the back of that thing. But what's nice is you still have a decent amount of room here, and I feel extremely comfortable. And this is definitely a back seat that I could take a road trip on pretty comfortably. I mean, especially with heated seats. You know, we've got power outlets and everything, which is a direct correlation to the F-150s. They're obviously really popular for having, I mean, even a laptop plug. We've got a 110 plug, as well as your regular cigarette lighter style, bullet style power plug. But I just think it's a really nice seat. This does not have any kind of adjustment as far as the bench rolling backwards or forwards like the Escape does. But it still has plenty of room. You can see back here with the front passenger seat just a little bit farther forward than the driver's seat. I think we're looking at maybe an inch or two up. I already have an extreme amount of room back here. This is just extremely comfortable. Headroom is nice as well. One of my favorite Ford design cues right now is just this massive, like, double panoramic sunroof, moonroof, whatever you want to call it, glass roof, whatever you want to call it. I just think it's really nice. And it's closed right now, and you know I'm going to open it here in a second. Just really nice. So I think it's time we kind of jump in the front and showcase there. All right, getting into the front of a Ford Edge ST. Now already we've got, again, the same kind of design cues on the door card on the front. Just like I said, it literally looks exactly the same. Minus the fact you've got different, buttons, obviously more of them here on the driver's side. But if you were to look at this card compared to the rear, it's literally the same. I mean, it's just kind of a nice thing. You're also greeted up here in the front with these Ford Performance door sills here. That's something kind of nice. I mean, Ford is very proud of their heritage and their branding when it comes to their performance products. They could have just put Edge or something there, but I kind of like the fact that they're embracing the overall design language of the Ford Performance brand, if you will. So as we kind of jump in here, you can initially see that we are greeted by an ST badged steering wheel. Of course, if we were to look over here at the seats, we do have ST badging. It's kind of embossed here into the leather. I'm kind of actually glad that they did not go with like a red or yellow or some sort of crazy white stitching on that, because I think it's a little bit too boy racer. I mean, we are in a crossover SUV, but again, we've got the same kind of seat material where it's got this kind of tough fabric here on the inside, as circled and wrapped here by the leather. I just think it's a really nice seat setup. These front seats are extremely grippy, and I believe they even do have some additional bolster support. So if you wanted to have more or less support on that, you definitely could. Now we're in this thing and we haven't even turned it on, so let's go ahead and do that. Of course, like anything nowadays, it's going to have a push button start. Lots of screens, of course. So you can see here on the gauge cluster, the center instrument is just your regular speedometer and your gear selector. You can kind of see where you are there. Your left screen here is your customizable screen. What's nice is there are a lot of options for what you can cycle through here. So you make these adjustments by using the thumb dial here on the steering wheel. But I like as you kind of go through here, you can obviously have your digital speedometer. Of course, this is all-wheel drive. Every single ST comes standard with all-wheel drive. All-wheel drive is optional on all of the other options. And they're pretty proud of this all-wheel drive system. It does have an all-wheel drive disconnect. So if you're not really needing the all-wheel drive and you just want the fuel economy benefits, it can disengage. But what's nice is it even kind of gives you a little bit of an indicator on performance driving, how much traction is being sent to each wheel. That's something that's kind of neat. Probably a lot of people wouldn't care, but for those that are buying an ST, that's something that they might actually enjoy. Now this is a fully functional boost gauge, and I think this is awesome. Now when we're just at idle here, you can't really rev up the engine to a point where you're actually building boost in the turbos, but as soon as you're in gear and you actually have the engine under load, it definitely starts to read. And I would say you start to get turbo boost around 1500 to 2000 RPMs, and just from me driving around it for a minute, I think it tends to peak around probably 5,000 or 6,000 RPMs. And it's pretty cool. I think it's like 14 pounds, something like that on the turbo, which is pretty neat. It's a lot more than a lot of other ones. And of course you do have your digital tack there, and you can adjust that where you've got your digital tack with your temperature gauge. So that's pretty neat. Over here on the right side screen, this doesn't have as many customizable features. It's basically just your entertainment. This kind of syncs up with your center stack screen here. So as we look here, currently it's set on the entertainment setting. Basically anything that you're playing, like your Bluetooth or your Sirius XM or whatever, you can see the same details there as you would over here on your main screen. You can cycle through this again with thumb or finger switches here on the steering wheel. Very easy to navigate. So you can actually put navigation on there, and I do believe if you actually have a destination set, that compass kind of moves over or maybe even gets rid of altogether, and can feed you turn-by-turn directions as well as what's being given to you on here. So that's pretty nice. Not a whole lot that you can do with this screen. Obviously you've got your phone settings, which we don't have one connected. This is a brand new vehicle with 5 miles on it, so we don't have anything there. But if you want to make a phone call, answer a phone call, you have all of your Bluetooth settings here, of course. Now, one of the things that this ST is equipped with, of course, it has all of the standard safety features, which I can go over here in a minute, but the additional stuff that this car comes with, I believe this has the Copilot 360 Assist, or the Copilot, you know, 360 Plus, whatever they call it. But you actually have your cruise control here, and the two main things is you have your lane keep assist right here, and of course you have your adaptive cruise control. And I was playing with these earlier. These correlate to what's going on here in the screen. So if we turn on our cruise control, if we look here on the dashboard, if we push the button here, this will change how much distance we have on the car in front of us. So as you can see right now, I believe it should be maxed out. You know, the most distance, that's kind of like for your cruising distance there. And obviously you can make it move a little bit closer and a little bit closer. The reasons why you might want to adjust that is obviously if you're at a higher speed, you're going to want a little bit more distance. But if you're in bumper to bumper traffic and you keep that kind of distance between you, you're just going to get cut off all the time. So if you're in bumper to bumper traffic, which this does support, it has stop and go, you can narrow that field between you and the car in front of you. The other button that's on here, again, is your lane keep assist, and that is easily demonstrated here on the display with an adjustment there. You can see how it basically shows you the lines, so you can turn that on or off. I think it's really neat. You know, it's not an autopilot, but it's pretty close. I mean, you're obviously keeping your hands on the steering wheel, but it will kind of keep you centered, and it will keep the distance in front of you. I swear, my next vehicle is going to have adaptive cruise control. I've used it before. I've done a lot of traveling, and I think it's just probably one of the neatest features you could have in a car. Just super handy. So as we come around, we've got the Sync 3 screen here. This is a pretty standard touchscreen setup for all the Ford models nowadays. This one, you've got pretty basic stuff. You got all your audio controls. You do have your climate controls. Now, you do have, in this car, this one's pretty well equipped with it being an ST. You do have a heated steering wheel, which you can see on here. You've got your phone settings. Again, we don't have anything hooked up. Obviously, your full screen navigation, any apps that you would set up with the Ford Connect app, your Android Auto, your Apple CarPlay, things like that would show up here once your phone is connected. And then, of course, different vehicle settings. One thing of note on here, which you're not going to find in many of the other Ford cars, you're definitely not going to find it in a, I don't know, let's just say a Ford Transit, is you actually have a valet mode, which I think is pretty sweet. As somebody who used to work valet, I think it's a pretty smart thing. So you can actually create a 4-digit PIN. So when you hand over the car to somebody, it basically cuts power and, you know, cuts boost, so that even if somebody were to try to do something stupid with this vehicle, they're gonna have difficulties. And I think it even kind of uses the cameras to, you know, report activity. Now, speaking of cameras, you definitely are going to have your rear camera here as normal. You know, pretty much all vehicles nowadays are legally required to have that. Ford has a really good reputation just for how clear their cameras are. It's just a much nicer high-def image than you get in some of your other vehicles. You can also, we'll put it back in park here. You can also push this button here, and this is kind of a big thing for the Explorer as well. But you can, oh boy, there we go, sheesh. So you can hit that camera button here and actually get a forward-facing view. You can see there's some Expeditions right there, and they're showing up right here on the screen. It does have a split view. So if you want to have a little bit of a wider range, obviously now we can see, you know, all the way out over here, almost in this blind spot where you've got these other edges here. They are now completely visible here. That's just something really handy when you're kind of moving around a parking lot. You know, specifically you're trying to get out of a parking spot and you want to kind of see what's going on. Let's see, you've got a couple of SUVs parked beside you. That's just kind of a nice handy feature. And I like that it's just built in here with just a single button. Very easy to access. You know, this touchscreen has extra features to it, but with having all of your controls here, mainly your HVAC controls, your heated and cooled seats, which I currently have on just because I love it. It's just, you feel like you're sitting in like water. It's just the most bizarre experience. But it's just nice that you've got all of your everyday controls down here, all where they really should be. And then if you want to get fancy and get tricky, you've got all your stuff up there. So this is by all means not a touchscreen you are forced to interact with while you're driving down the road. I think that's really smart. Of course, you're going to have lots of pockets and things like that on the center console. Down here, we actually have a wireless charging pad. which works with most phones. It definitely works with mine. I have a Samsung. I'm sure it works with iPhones and Motorola's and a lot of other ones. As we move down here, you can see we've got Ford's traditional rotary dial shift knob now. This is something that they are basically implementing in all of their cars at this point. The key thing to note here is you do have a dedicated sport mode, which will, of course, right now will only engage if you're in drive. Basically, you put it in sport mode while you're driving. That does a lot with changing the shift points, the kind of timing, the ignition timing, just a lot of just different settings on how the car runs, as well as making the paddle shifters completely available where it'll actually kind of hold the gears where they are without doing any shifting for you. Basically fully engages that kind of sport mode if you really want to take control over the driving experience. We've got lots of power ports. You can see we've got USB. I think it's kind of cool that we've gone away from having your traditional bullet style plug, since everybody's charging their phones in their cars now. So not only do you have the wireless pad, but you've got those 2 ports there. You know, just like any of these cars, you do have your traditional 12 volt here. So if you were to want to use like a dash cam or some sort of like third-party GPS, or, you know, I don't know, any other kind of adapters, you have that option. Super deep pocket here in the center console. This pretty much goes right up to my elbow. So you've got tons of storage there, as well as this tray that basically sits on top here, which is carpeted. You can put some stuff in there. As you can kind of see here, we have ambient lighting. Ambient lighting follows through not only in the cup holders, but underneath of the dashboard there. You can kind of see it. You can even see it under here reflecting on the plastic. So just a really nice kind of clean interior up here. I like that you have this pocket here and this pocket there, which kind of serve as like a wallet pocket, or, you know, even a cell phone pocket. Like my phone currently fits in that pocket. It'll also fit in here standing up. So it's just kind of nice to have those different options there. Right here, this is another kind of Ford thing for a lot of their vehicles. This is where you can control the auto stop start. So if you're not a fan of it kind of cutting off at red lights, which I think Ford does a really good job with that on these cars. I'm probably going to do a whole video just about that. But if you didn't like that feature, it's just super easy to turn that off. Again, you don't have to go into the touchscreen for it. All of your different parking aids are navigated through here, so you can see, you know, we've played with this before, but you can turn that on. And then if you just want to turn off your parking sensors, you know, you've got an easy switch there. I'm not sure why people want to turn that off, but I don't know. Maybe there's an opportunity where that's a necessary evil. Ford, of course, likes to have, this has been an old school thing for a long time, but you've got your different buttons here, so you can program a garage door opener. And then I would consider this the, you know, piece de resistance. I am just still a huge fan of this incredibly massive dual moonroof, and they've got this moonroof sunroof assembly on a lot of the vehicles that Ford now sells. But I just think this is an absolutely amazing driving experience, especially, again, as somebody who's tall, sitting in here and having this massive piece of glass above my head. I really do feel like I am almost driving a convertible in some ways. I mean, you don't have the wind coming in, but you just have so much headroom between you and the ceiling. And not only that, it just lets an incredible amount of light in here. And I love the fact that it goes all the way over to the, you know, basically the back headrests of the rear seats. So, you know, gone are the days of the sunroof just being for the front passengers. You know, the rear passengers can also enjoy having the, you know, the light or the fresh air. And I think it's really cool, like at nighttime. It's just really nice to have that. Of course, if we want to open this, the front massive half the glass rolls back. So you've got about, I'd say about 1.5 feet of open sunroof. That's about a traditional sunroof size. You know, unfortunately can't have all that glass go back. But if we do close this, this will go all the way now. So if we do close this, we do have the option, if we want to, that we can pop it open. I think that's just kind of neat as well. So if you still just want to be driving down the road, and if it's raining like it is today, you can see we just got a little bit of water in here. You can still get that little bit of airflow as it kind of, you know, sucks air out from the inside of the car and gives you a little bit of a breeze feeling. I'm just a huge fan of this. I wish that all, you know, cars nowadays could have this. I just think it's really neat. One more thing I want to point out about the interior of this car, and sadly I can't really fully showcase it, is the fact that this has a really nice premium Bang & Olufsen sound system. Pretty much all the top of the line Fords come with that stereo system. It is a really nice, finely tuned stereo, which is full of bass, has freaking speakers everywhere. You've got, you know, tweeters in the doors, you've got woofers in the doors, you've got, you know, basically the same setup back here. You can see a tweeter up top with a woofer down here. Speakers everywhere. You've got additional speakers over the rear head. You can see them kind of tucked away there in the C-pillar. I've had this thing playing and I've sat in here for a minute while I was kind of getting prepped for this video, and the stereo sounds great here. Of course, you can have, you know, your XM radio to all your satellite stuff, your Bluetooth, all that kind of thing, and it just sounds really good. The last thing, which I don't even think really anybody would really notice or point out, you could call this like a Doug DeMuro quirk, if you will, is there is somebody that's sitting in the Ford design studio or in the engineering department that I'm sure had what they thought was going to be a joke, or something maybe it's just funny, or maybe this is just an old school Edge thing. But if we zoom in right here on the dashboard, let's see if we can bring this in. There we go. You can kind of see it in this video, but right there is a little tiny little bit of text that says Edge. And you might say, what's yeah, it's a Ford Edge. What's kind of the point in that? Well, the point that I'm making here is look where they put that. They literally put that tiny little Edge logo on the edge of the dashboard. So that is kind of just something that I think, you know, is a nice little just kind of design quirk that I like to see when somebody's spent the time to think of something like that, is they just gave you a tiny little bit of a, you know, Edge logo and then just tucked it right here at the edge of the dashboard. Just think the little design features like that is kind of cool. Let's be real here. If you're watching this video, especially if you've made it this far, the real reason why we're here is we want to find out, how does this drive? How does that 300 horsepower actually translate when we're driving a crossover SUV? So let's just find out. All right, so let's go ahead and take this thing out on the road and see how it drives. Put it in drive, headlights on, adjust the seat forward a little bit more. So what's nice about having something like this, I'll admit, when they first started coming out with the different crossovers and things like that, I was kind of not really a fan of traditional sedans going by the wayside, but honestly, I really get why there's a lot more people looking at, you know, SUVs and pickup trucks and bigger vehicles. They just honestly offer a whole lot more. You know, gone are the days where having a big SUV meant that you were going to get really terrible fuel economy. I mean, here we are in like a mid 300s horsepower car that still gets like in the 20s. I mean, I think on the interstate you can still get like 26 miles a gallon. That just doesn't happen. You know, anything, you know, even 10 or 20 years ago that had turbochargers was generally going to get like in the teens. So you've got a car now that is really quick, that, you know, handles well, that has plenty of space inside, has all these crazy tech features and stuff like that, but, you know, also is economical and gives you that, you know, gut punch that a turbo, or in this case 2 turbos, gives you as you're driving around. Now, what I like about stuff like this, you know, I do love a big pickup truck. I just love how those drive. But with this being a much more manageable size, you do still have that kind of higher upright feeling of driving an SUV as you're moving down the road. But you're in a much more manageable package than, say, like an Explorer or an Expedition, which is great for hauling people. But this, you've got a really good field of view kind of going over the hood. You know, you've got a really good feeling of where your corners are. You don't have a huge rear hatch area. So it's kind of just really easy to kind of know where you are. And just with the way they design these Edges, they've got the wheelbase about stretched out as far as you can to the corners. So you can just kind of tell it has a very kind of squatty feeling. Now, this is the first time I've actually taken this Edge out on the road, and I can honestly say I'm actually a pretty big fan of just the overall feeling you get from being in the driver's seat. And, you know, part of that is, yes, the driver's seat is extremely bolstered and has the proper amount of like firmness, so you're not just completely sitting on a, you know, soft plush cushion. But what I'm getting from the steering wheel and the suspension as they go over bumps, I like the fact that it doesn't feel overly stiff like an old, you know, Suburban or something like that, like an old pickup truck might feel. But you do get a nice bit of it's pretty quick. I mean, I'm not even trying it. I just kind of put my toe on the throttle there, and it was starting to move a little bit more than I was expecting. But again, what I was saying is I just like the kind of response you get. I like that the steering doesn't feel vague. I'm literally giving very minor inputs to the steering wheel, and I can feel the suspension's doing some work. I can feel, you know, the vehicle's turning with very little effort. I mean, I don't think I have any really good curvy roads to throw this on, but I can imagine this would probably handle very well. Just really nice. You know, just driving around like this, I'm in normal mode, it's just in regular drive. You know, it's not a car that's overly aggressive. You know, there's no crazy exhaust note or anything. There's no turbo noises right now that are going off in my ears. It just rides like just about any other SUV, minus the fact that you can totally tell you are way more connected to the road in this than you would in like a base model, or, you know, honestly, even like an older Fiesta or something like that. So far, I'm actually really impressed with this, since they're going with this and the Explorer ST as kind of being the replacements kind of for the Fiesta and Focus ST. Now, I don't necessarily see this being a track car. You know, there's better cars for that. Now, they do have a performance driving school. It's part of the ST program, where you could go and drive on a track with instructors, and I believe that's something that's included when you buy an ST. It's kind of like a twice-a-year thing, and you know, you stay in a hotel and all that kind of stuff, and you get some seat time, so you can actually do some performance driving, probably like some autocross course stuff, some hard braking maneuvers, things like that. But I just like overall how connected this SUV feels. One thing that this specific car that I'm driving is lacking, that's probably the only thing it doesn't have, or doesn't have available on it at least, is the fact that there is a higher kind of handling and performance upgrade. It specifically targets the brake system. It gives you larger discs, it gives you different pad material, and some other kind of characteristics that go along with that. That's probably the only thing missing from here. You do get bigger wheels. They are the ones that come in black. Pretty much all of the STs that have the silver machined with the black painted pockets, those are going to be a regular ST. Any of the ones that have the something is cammed, I can hear it, but any of the ones that have the larger, I think the 21-inch black wheels, those are going to be the ones that have the performance package. That's kind of the easy way to tell the difference there. Going over bumps and stuff feels pretty good. Doesn't feel bone jarring. There's a bunch of railroad tracks. I'm gonna go over here in a minute and actually see. Oh yeah, it's really not bad. I don't know if it's the seat that's making up for it, if it's just the suspension, but no rattles, no pops. I mean, you would hope that that wouldn't happen in a brand new car. We got a train over there, we can't go that way. But it definitely feels poised. So yeah, that'll just about do it for this video. Obviously, I did not cover absolutely every single feature that's imaginable. I'm sure there's things that I missed. I'm sure there's something that I got wrong in this. But this is generally just meant to be kind of an overview of, you know, kind of my first impressions and kind of my first hands-on with this Ford Edge ST. Again, every time I look in the camera here, I can just kind of look at this nice, huge panoramic sunroof. I mean, what more could you ask for in something like this? You know, if you have any questions about these vehicles, you can obviously stop by your local Ford dealer. Again, my name is Brian Cooper. I'm over here at Ken Wilson Ford in Canton, North Carolina. Here in the mountains, a good spot for a Ford Edge ST to live. So thank you so much, and have a great day.